years in Trinidad. And Langham had been taken up with great enthusiasm throughout Bolivia. But incredibly, they had no meaningful foothold in Santa Cruz, the biggest city in Bolivia. And so I asked my friend, the director of Langham, if he felt that they would welcome my help in maybe trying to get things started a little bit in Santa Cruz. And he nearly bit my hand off. He was delighted to have the offer of help. So there were some positive signs already. Well, we finally returned to our home base of Trinidad, Bolivia, later in September. And one of my first tasks was submitting a formal application for the pastoral post at Trinity, an English language church. And a series of Skype interviews with the search committee ensued over the following months. Meanwhile, we attended to our ministry back in Trinidad, but this was looking quite different now. Amanda was still under orders to keep resting until such time as she felt ready to return to ministry, which was fine. As for me, I was running into what you might call a happy problem for a missionary. I was finding myself increasingly with not that much to do. Much of my work in the church in particular was being done or was being overseen by others, and very capably, as it happened. If anything, this felt like further confirmation that our time in Trinidad was nearly at an end. But things were getting serious in Santa Cruz, and the search committee of Trinity wrote to Amanda and I, to ask if we would come through as a family in December for a 10-day period, during which we would get to know the congregation, and I would preach in the church on 2 separate Sundays before the church made a decision on whether or not to accept me as pastor. Well, I must have done something right, because a few minutes after my second sermon, which is pictured here, on the 16th of December, the membership of Trinity unanimously voted to welcome me as their pastor. I'm not sure they knew what they were getting themselves in for, but there you go. Well, as the new year began, Amanda was clearly improving. That week even in Santa Cruz, with all the activities that we had, meeting all these new people, would have been very tough for her if she were not on the road to recovery. So that was a good thing. But having accepted the post, which was going to begin in February, we now had just 5 weeks to wrap up our work in Trinidad, to find a property in Santa Cruz, and to pack up our entire home for an intercity move. They say that moving house is one of the top 3 most stressful experiences that you can undergo. And this was hardly an ideal situation then for a couple very much in recovery, if you will. And yet God gave us both the grace to get through this relatively unscathed. There's yet more evidence, I think, of a corner being turned. That move, by the way, was a whole other story in itself, as they say up here. You can read more about it on our blog if you have time to look at that at a later juncture. So we found ourselves, as we hoped, in a physical location with the resources that we needed to keep going. Well, what are some of these resources? Well, first of all, basic amenities. As the team from Mount Albert discovered on their recent visit to Trinidad, there are things that we take for granted in the West that you can't count on necessarily in a place like Trinidad. Things like clean water, ventilation, paved roads, a balanced diet, a steady electricity supply. When Amanda and I first went out to Trinidad, we were young, we didn't have any kids, and so all of that seemed like something of an adventure. 9 years later, wasn't so much feeling like an adventure anymore. God will provide many more people with such energy levels in the future, of course. But I think for us, those days were past. In Santa Cruz, a big developed city, we can count on many of these amenities, and thus not lose so much time and energy, I think, that could be spent in the Lord's purposes. Education is another factor. Staying in Trinidad is likely to provide big challenges in this area as well. I think for Sam to have had anything like a Western quality education, we'd likely have had to homeschool him, which I'm not sure either was necessarily prepared for. But at Santa Cruz, Sam was enrolled in a solid English language school with an excellent reputation and with strong links to the mission community. So we're really happy about that. And perhaps the most important resource of all is people. For most of the last few years in Trinidad, we were the only missionary couple left. And when Amanda hit the wall, one of the hardest aspects was that very few people in our church truly understood what she was going through, particularly as someone living so far from home. And in Santa Cruz, we're part of a large missionary community now, many of whom can relate all too well to our own difficulties. There are even a lot of people who have adopted children and can relate to those experiences as well. So there's a big support network there. That's not to say, though, that all our key relationships are limited to foreigners. We've made some excellent connections too with some really impressive nationals. In fact, 50% of the church, despite being an English language church, is made up of Bolivians who've come to the church to learn English, and many of them have come to saving faith in the process. So Amanda and I have the resources to keep at it, as you can see. But what is it that we're doing now? Well, there are three main things that we're involved in our ministry now. Firstly, as I've already mentioned, I'm now pastoring the English language church, Trinity. And the main work so far has been preaching. And I think the church has responded really positively to a consistent diet of expository preaching after 4 years without a pastor. The church, like any church, has its own unique challenges. Despite being English language, as I was saying, the congregation is actually split more or less evenly between foreigners and Bolivians who have come to the church to learn English. And perhaps the main challenge then is developing more of a community feel to the church, particularly across this cultural divide. So I've been trying to initiate new programs in recent months to this end, including a weekly men's football evening at which the brothers Snooks excelled themselves, I have to say, a few weeks ago. And also our first ever church barbecue, which we hope to make more of a regular fixture. I'm also hoping to add a new midweek meeting in coming months. The church is only meeting on Sundays at the moment. I think this will help to provide further opportunities for fellowship in the church. My other main work is with Langham Preaching. And in June, we had a launch event at which 12 new preaching cell groups were established in the city of Santa Cruz, basically from nothing to 12 in the space of a day. And in September, these groups are going to come together for our first annual workshop in Santa Cruz, and they will then split off into groups to meet as cell groups throughout the coming year. And I'm going to be involved in visiting and encouraging these various groups throughout the city as the year progresses. Excitingly, we're also going to be starting a cell group at Trinity in order to develop a wider pool of preaching support. This group is actually made up entirely of Bolivians. And who knows, maybe the next pastor of Trinity will come from that group. Wouldn't that be amazing? And finally, most excitingly of all, Amanda has returned to ministry. She feels she's now at a place where she's able to do so. And it is in a role in which she is thriving. When Amanda was in Trinidad, possibly the favourite thing that she did there was work alongside short-term volunteers, particularly young people who came for periods of months or up to a year. So she's become the short-term coordinator for Latin Link in Bolivia. That's to say she's responsible for ensuring that short-term volunteers with our mission, usually young people, are being looked after and are in a fit state to serve emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So Amanda has great expertise in this area, and in a sense she's really landed on her feet, and she loves this work that she's involved in. So these are our three main ministry roles now. And you may have noticed that of those three, two of them require us to work in support of overseas Christian workers. In fact, all of them essentially are requiring us to support Christian workers, whether they be Bolivian or overseas. And so in two of those roles, we're supporting other missionaries. It's not so long ago that Amanda and I would have looked at such work, and I think, to be honest, we would almost have considered it cheating. But we know now, we know all too well, that it's anything but. That support to missionaries is absolutely vital if their valuable work is to keep going. And we know this because of our own experiences. And it's these very experiences that we believe have uniquely equipped us to minister to our fellow Christian workers in this way. These experiences, I have to say, have quite honestly left us dumbfounded, bewildered, even at times, if I'm honest, angry with God. Yet God was using these to prepare us for this exciting new chapter. He is so, so good. I'll close with a thought from Scripture. Last week I was reading, I've been working through Judges with a resource that's absolutely invaluable. If you read one book on the book of Judges, make sure it's Dale Ralph Davis's commentary. It's a fantastic piece of work. It's actually very funny at times. It's an extremely readable commentary, but with a very, very high view on Scripture's authority. It's a fabulous resource. And in Judges 6, the people of Israel have fallen into apostasy, and this happens so much in Judges. They are then made to suffer under a foreign oppressor. And the people of Israel cry out to God. Usually when they do this in Judges, it's not a cry of genuine repentance, they simply want help. And up to this point, God has sent someone to save them from the yoke of their enemies. But this time, he sent a prophet. And Dale Ralph Davis says that this is like a stranded motorist calling a garage for assistance, and the garage sending a philosopher instead of a mechanic. Why? Because, as he says, Israel needs more than immediate relief. They need to understand why they are oppressed. And this is what we need. Of course, God could have saved Amanda immediately. God could even have sent us back, or sent us to the city of Santa Cruz immediately. This would all seem ideal at the time. But just like Israel, Amanda and I needed to see where we had gone wrong. We needed to see our overdependence on our own strength and not on God's. We needed to see our unconscious idolatry of ministry. We needed to see our misplaced identity in what we were doing rather than who we are in Christ. And so while we have recovered, if you like, in one sense, we are not where we once were. We will bear the scars of this season for life. But they have been good scars. And when we look at these scars, if you like, we'll be reminded of this. We are now living what people would maybe call today a new normal. We recognize our limitations. We're depending on God. We're rejoicing in God. And we're serving at last from the overflow of that joy. And we feel secure in His approval. So that when we do, God willing, come back, hopefully with Amanda next time, to share a report with you, we're not going to share facts and figures as some kind of justification for our existence as missionaries, but rather to point to the grace of God. Because it's not our work, after all, but His. Remember what the psalmist said in Psalm 119. It was good for me to be afflicted, so that I might learn your decrees. And my prayer for you, personally, if you're going through a similarly demanding, similarly confusing season, is that you would hear what God is surely saying to you through this. And that this would be a time that you, like us, can look back on and rejoice in and give thanks for. Let me finish by praying. Heavenly Father, you are a great, wise, and good God. You know what we need, much more so than we ourselves. We thank you for this. We thank you that we can trust you with every moment, that you're working in every situation for our good, even when it seems quite the contrary. You're so faithful, and we are so unfaithful at times. Yet you promise not to let go as your covenant love remains, and will do so for all eternity. Help us, God, to cling to that, and thank you for the opportunity to share my testimony this evening.